Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Snoop4Truth. The incredible music that you're hearing in the background was provided by Roland, Germain. Thank you for the new Snoop4Truth theme. I just love that music, don't you guys? Roland did an incredible job. All right, so everybody, today is August 29th, 2019. We've got two Snoop4Truths for you today, and the first one is another of Deborah Tavares' crazy conspiracy claims, and this one is a truly crazy one. It's called the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars hoax. Snoop has done investigative research on this, and as we know, Snoop is our super sleuther and always provides us with factual information and verified links that will be in the description of this video. I want to make sure that everybody is aware that there is a playlist for Snoop4Truth. It's called Snoop4Truth Facts. You can locate it under the Virgo Triad home page of my channel in the playlist section. And all of Snoop4Truth's videos are in there. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about this Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and I'm going to be taking you over to the document that's actually located on Deborah Tavares' website. So here is the actual PDF document that's located on Deborah Tavares' website called stopthecrime.net. The link will be in the description for you to take a look at both the website and the PDF form, document that I am going to be going over. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. But before I do that, let's take a listen at what Deborah had to say about this herself.
An hour. But the Silent Weapons technical manual describes what a silent weapons system is, and it's very important to understand what was concocted and what was schemed against all of us. They say in the beginning of the document that whenever a small group of people that have the mythologies and the resources and plan to control the global economy on all levels without discussion with the populations, without our knowledge or consent, it must be considered a declaration of war. And that is what this document is. It is a declaration of war.
Unbelievable. Okay, so as you know, Snoop is extremely detail-oriented. So what I'm going to be doing for this one is I'm going to actually read to you verbatim what Snoop has had to say about this specific conspiracy theory. The Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars hoax. The document is real, but it is only a political fiction. It has also been modified to fit the hoax. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this here so you guys can see what Snoop is talking about. It now has a fake, recently added paragraph at the beginning which fraudulently indicates that it is the work of the Bilderbergs. And as you guys can see what I've highlighted, it states the document represents the doctrine adopted by the policy committee of the Bilderberg Group. It is first known meeting in 1954. But Snoop says that the hoax is not the document anyway. Instead of the hoax being the document, it's actually that Deborah Tavares' own fraudulent claims that the document alone constitutes proof that the Bilderbergs adopted a plan in 1954 to kill us all with diabolical, silent weapons in quiet wars. In furtherance of the planned extinction of mankind, But her claims about this document are not so. This tiny 44-page booklet was written in 1979 and is actually political fiction. It is a disguised complaint about the treason and horrors suffered by U.S. soldiers when the U.S. government allegedly allowed them to be killed at Pearl Harbor in order to draw us into World War II. This tiny little booklet has absolutely nothing to do with the Bilderbergs at all. The Bilderbergs may actually be killing us all with diabolical silent weapons in quiet wars in furtherance of planned extinction of mankind, but this particular document itself, upon which Deborah Tavares herself says she bases this particular claim on, provides absolutely no support for that proposition at all, because it is actually only political fiction. Now let's get into some actual evidence. So, here's the hoax. In the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars hoax, Deborah Tavares fraudulently claims to have discovered another secret or leaked official document, which she claims constitutes proof that the Bilderbergs are killing us all, or plan to kill us all, with silent weapons in quiet wars in furtherance of the planned execution of mankind. Deborah Tavares fraudulently claims that these silent weapons are cell phones, cell towers, Wi-Fi, smart meters, 5G, geoengineering, PG&E, dues in space. I hope I said that right. I think it's dues, DEWs, in space, HARP, etc. But none of her claims about this document are so. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars is actually a short 44-page booklet of political fiction written by Lyle Hartford Van Dyke in 1979, which he mailed to Congress. Van Dyke is a convicted felon who spent a decade in federal prison for fraud, for manufacturing and uttering fake currency, and for writing checks drawn on his imaginary trust account at the U.S. Treasury. Sound familiar, guys? So, the Silent Wars for Quiet Weapons is not a secret, leaked, or suppressed government document. Van Dyke was not a whistleblower. He was a political commentator. Van Dyke believed, perhaps correctly, that the U.S. had advanced knowledge of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and allowed it to happen, killing thousands of American soldiers in order to draw the U.S. into World War II. Van Dyke's father's uncle was directly involved in all of these alleged events, and Van Dyke was raised to believe that all of this was so. Van Dyke was outraged by this perceived treasonous act of war by the U.S. government upon its own soldiers, and wanted to make the horrors of this perceived treasonous act of war personal to the American public. So Van Dyke wrote Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and suggested that instead of intentionally killing its own soldiers in such a treasonous act of war, the U.S. government was instead killing its own civilian population in such a treasonous act of war, a clever twist of the perceived facts. Note that this claim would indeed make the horrors of such a Pearl Harbor-type war on Americans personal to the reader. But Van Dyke realized that the public would not actually believe his premise of the U.S. war against the American public without the presence of the usual weapons of war, like those that were present at Pearl Harbor: armed soldiers, trucks, tanks, planes, ships, missiles, bombs, and etc. So, in writing Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, Van Dyke suggested that all of the weapons that the U.S. government was using in its fictional war against the American public were high-tech weapons that could not be seen or heard, which Deborah Tavares has recently embellished to mean cell phones, cell towers, Wi-Fi, microwaves, smart meters, 5G, geoengineering, PG&E, dues in space, and HARP. Indeed, it was precisely because such weapons could not be seen or heard that Van Dyke's claims actually appeared to be true. All of this actually made Van Dyke's claims of invisible and inaudible weapons more, not less, believable to the reader. By using this ruse, Van Dyke actually made the absence of weapons even more horrifying to the reader than their presence would have been. It was absolutely brilliant. Now, Van Dyke openly admits that Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars was inspired by an earlier book of political fiction, which he greatly admired, and it was entitled The Report from Iron Mountain. Van Dyke also openly admits to having incorporated sections of real scientific and economic technical studies of others into his work, as did the report from Iron Mountain on which his work was modeled, to make his work look more realistic. Finally, Van Dyke openly admits that he created Silent Wars for Quiet Weapons to read like an official governmental document, and did the report from Iron Mountain, on which his work was modeled. In order to make the horrors of the U.S. government waging a covert war against its own citizens appear more realistic and therefore more terrifying to the reader, it worked. All right, so let's take a look at Snoop's facts here. According to Van Dyke himself, the original version of his document had no preface or foreword at all and made no reference to any elite culprit such as the Bilderbergs. But for some strange reason, the version of this document on Deborah Tavares' website contains a fake preface, foreword, indicating that Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars is a plan adopted by the Bilderbergs in 1954, at its first meeting for the planned extinction of mankind. Thus, someone, likely Tavares herself, recently added this fake section to Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars to give it global rather than merely national implications. Here is some of the proof that Snoop has located. Van Dyke's own words about Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. All right, so I'm taking you guys over here just to get a glimpse of it here. There's a number of, this is a very wordy document here. I'd like to go ahead and include this link in the description for you guys to actually take a look at and read for yourself. As Snoop says, it's a must read. But if I read all of the documents that Snoop has been able to pull up in order to prove that this is actually a hoax, I would be making a 2-hour-long video. So what I'm going to do is just include all of these links, including the links to the original document, the Tavares website, and all of the information that Snoop provides for us in the description so that you can actually go through and read this all for yourself. Okay, so here we go again with the Hartford Van Dyke letter that was mailed from a federal prison. And this, again, has a tremendous amount of additional information where he talks about the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars and all the information that we just went over. It provides you with absolute proof that this was absolutely fiction. All right, so what Snoop has here for proof that Van Dyke's complaint was the alleged U.S. betrayal at Pearl Harbor when discussing his work, Van Dyke himself said, and this is a quote, Van Dyke placed into Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars is an anagram for the date of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, 4/1/12/07. My book on the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was published at the end of August 1973. And that's an excerpt from the link that I already shared with you in the description of this video, and you will find that information there. Here is proof that Van Dyke's complaint was the alleged U.S. betrayal at Pearl Harbor, and I'm going to take you over there. And as you can see at Paranoia Magazine, here is another article with regards to Hartford Van Dyke and the truth about Pearl Harbor. And it gives you all of the information as provided by Snoop. So I will include that in the link of the description also. All right, here we are at the conclusion. Thus, contrary to the claims of Deborah Tavares, silent weapons for quiet wars does not prove that the Bilderbergs plan to kill us all with silent weapons in quiet wars in furtherance of the planned extinction of mankind. To the contrary, silent weapons for quiet wars actually reflects an effort on the part of a single American civilian through the clever use of fiction to call attention to the U.S. war policies that he perceived as harmful to Americans. Deborah Tavares knew the truth about the document all along, but she decided to lie to the American people about it anyway in order to incite hatred and violence against innocent Americans. Let's just, again, you know how many times we have talked about the fact that there is all of these groups, the Sovsit groups, are all making an attempt to incite hatred and violence, attempting to pin us against one another, and will go after people like myself and Snoop, who actually inform you of the factual information that debunks this junk with guns blazing. I mean, they absolutely despise us to the point of threatening to hack us, to the point of threatening to kill us. There are so many death threats that the Virgo Triad channel has received over the last 3 years. I can't even, off the top of my head, I should be able to tell you an amount, and I can't. There are that many. So they want to suppress anyone debunking these claims, and they absolutely want to incite hatred and violence, and not just that. But the people that actually believe these things are going out there and finding themselves placed in prisons. Not maybe in a scenario like this one, but for example, the author of this book even found himself in prison for trying to crack the code of his secret Squirrel Trust account that Harvey Dent, April LeJeune, Ruana Wales, and Dorsey's Resources, and everybody that are on the web that are the Sovset group that talk about this redemption theory BS are constantly trying to pound into people's heads. So it isn't just a weapon of hatred and violence, but there's a desire to see Americans place themselves in place their freedom in jeopardizing positions. Something we all need to think about, maybe a little closer. Especially when you look at the subjects we've been talking about for the last 4 or 5 months, because we have a group that would be considered the Sovsit group that speak directly to one group of people, and then we have the Moors on the other side, the online Moors from the consulate that are speaking to another group of people. And at the same time, they're both attempting to incite hatred for us against one another. The law abiders versus the law breakers. The Republicans versus the Democrats. The women versus the men. Seriously. So, how do you bring down a country, folks? Miss Tavares should be absolutely ashamed of herself. Being a part, and a long-term part, of this hatred. This attempt at trying to overthrow our government. It's disgusting. She should truly be ashamed of herself. And there will be much more to come on Miss Tavares. I have trouble even saying her name, you guys. I want to throw an R in there. She makes me so mad. All right. I want to thank Snoop for all of the wonderful information. Thank you so much to Mr. Germain for the wonderful intro music. Snoop wanted me to tell you thank you. And I want to thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to inform you of this information. I'll be coming right back with a second Snoop4Truth today. We got really lucky and Snoop must really like us. All right, everyone, have a great day.